Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending this News You Can Use event from the Office of Legal Services Innovation in the Utah Supreme Court. My name is Lucy Rica. I am the Executive Director of the office, and I am really pleased to have all of you here. We had a great response to this, and it's very exciting for all of us at the office. Couple of business housekeeping notes before I kick it to Dean Smith. Number one, this meeting is being recorded. We will post this panel to our website after it's over, so folks can check it out later. But just be aware of that. Please mute yourself if you haven't already. And I want to thank our co-sponsors. We have a great roster of co-sponsors who were really enthusiastic about jumping on with us for this. The Duke Center on Law and Tech, Stanford Codex, the Center for Legal Informatics, Stanford Center on the Legal Profession, ABA Center for Innovation, ILS, the Institute for the Advancement of the American Legal System at the University of Denver Law School, BYU's LawX, and the Utah Women Tech Council. So thanks to all of those folks for blasting out information on this event. And now I am pleased to invite Dean Gordon Smith, who is Dean of BYU's Law School and sort of preeminent figure in our field of law and innovation, and has been a really wonderful member of the regulatory reform work here in Utah and a wonderful colleague of mine. So Dean Smith, thank you. And thanks to all of our panelists. We'll get started.
Thank you, Lucy. I am really excited about today's event. I've been looking forward to it for a long time, and Lucy has just been an organizational maven. She has really kept us all on track, and I look forward to learning a lot from our panelists today. I wanted to start by telling a bit of a story about the Sandbox and then turn to our panelists. So I was recently reading a memorandum that was prepared by two professors at BYU Law School in 1976. And the professors wrote, almost everyone at one time or another needs the services of a lawyer, yet surveys show that only about a third of all middle-income Americans avail themselves of such services. That was 1976, and looking back to that time, we have an expression for this, and we call that the good old days. Since 1976, the US has been in a steady decline in access to justice. According to the 2020 World Justice Project, the US is presently tied for 109th out of 128 countries in terms of access and affordability to civil justice. According to a report of the Legal Services Corporation, 86% of civil legal problems reported by low-income Americans in 2016 and 17 received inadequate or no legal help. Situations include debt collection, housing rentals, insurance, employment, government benefits, clinical negligence, personal injury, or relationship breakdowns. There's a wide consensus on the existence of an access to justice gap, and there's substantial agreement on another point that is foundational to the reform effort, namely that legal aid and pro bono legal help will never close the gap. Recognizing the seriousness of this situation, the Utah Supreme Court has gained a national reputation for its efforts to narrow the access to justice gap, establishing statewide pro bono efforts, systemizing court-approved forms and making them accessible online, establishing a licensed paralegal practitioner program, and piloting an online dispute resolution model for small claims court. Although these reforms have been laudatory, they're clearly insufficient to the magnitude of the problem. Over the past several years, therefore, the Utah Bar and the Utah Supreme Court have collaborated on another reform, which we're here to talk about today. That is colloquially called the Utah Regulatory Sandbox. It culminated in an order of the court on August 13th, 2020, and associated revisions to the rules of professional conduct. And this regulatory sandbox provides for non-traditional legal providers and services, including entities with non-lawyer investment or ownership. Now, throughout this project, the court and the task forces that have been developing and implementing the idea have focused on benefiting consumers, which includes not only increasing access and affordability of legal services, but also protecting consumers from harm. This protection is built into the order with extensive monitoring of service providers. And my hope was that these reforms will also benefit lawyers, even those that even though that's not the primary motivation for the reform. The Supreme Court's job is to regulate the practice of law for the benefit of the public, not for the benefit of lawyers or the legal profession. It is important to note that most of the proposals that have been received in the sandbox were generated by or involve lawyers. But one of the things we know is that the access to justice gap is large enough that we will need to invoke people who are not licensed as lawyers. And my hope is that these reforms will lead to that result. Now, at the invitation of Justice Dino Himones, I was involved in this effort from the formation of the initial work group that on regulatory reform in early 2019, and then participated alongside Lucy and others who are on this call in the implementation task force. So I'm really thrilled today to speak with 4 entrepreneurs whose companies have been authorized to provide legal services in the Utah Sandbox. All of these companies are attempting to leverage legal services through technology. So let me just briefly introduce our panel and then ask them each to tell us a little bit about their businesses. Amber Bass is the head of US legal operations at LawGeex, which is a company that developed a software program to automate contract review and management using artificial intelligence. Jonathan Hansen-Ciccone is the founder and CEO of Estate Guru, which guides clients through the estate planning process. Aaron Levine is the CEO and founder of Hello Divorce, an award-winning online platform that helps self-represented folks navigate the divorce process on their own. And Daniel Wild manages the Utah Office of Law and Call, which is the first law firm wholly owned by non-lawyers in the United States. Okay, so let's get started with each of you taking a few minutes to describe your business model. What are you doing? And why did you need to come into the sandbox to do what you're doing? Or how did the sandbox influence what you're doing? And could we start with Amber?
Sure. So for those of you who aren't familiar with LawGeex, we are the pioneer of AI-driven automatic contract review automation. You'll hear me reference that as CRA, just FYI. Because we're the pioneers, we've had the luxury of time and experimentation to know what works and what doesn't work. And we've worked closely with in-house legal teams to learn more about what their risks and benefits are about using AI and other legal tech. I can take the whole hour to tell you about what we do, but I'm not going to. In a nutshell, our model prior to entering the Utah Sandbox is basically we work with clients, which can be anywhere from a mid-sized to a Fortune 500 company. We develop a playbook consisting of their policies on how to redline their contracts. We code it into our system. The client uploads contracts into our system, and the system reviews and marks up the contracts. Then we have, on the back end, we have a group of attorneys that are located in both Israel and here in Utah that review the document to make sure such things as grammar, spelling, capitalized terms are correct, that the language actually fits, that sort of thing. So they're kind of a quality assurance team. So even though we have a group of attorneys working in both Israel and Utah, we're licensed all over the place. Our Utah team has everywhere from New York to Oklahoma to Utah licensed attorneys. Israel is the same as far as licensed out of Israel. And so one of the issues that we found is, we obviously couldn't practice law, so we wouldn't be bound to the playbook itself. With this entrance into the Utah Sandbox, we're able to do much more, including what we're calling AI counsel. And what that is we're able to preemptively provide advice not found in the playbook. So instead of having to escalate to our clients, we can now do that. in ourselves. The AI can be created a little bit smarter, where it can give that advice. So it's not just coming from our team, it's coming from the actual AI itself. And we're also able to help our clients build playbooks where they don't have current policies in place. You'd be surprised how many companies don't really know what fallback positions are, and that sort of thing. So by creating these types of policies for them, it's helped standardize the AI, which helps standardize the contracts. It also opens up our base to not only these mid-sized and Fortune 500 companies, but also the smaller companies like the startup techs, which here in Lehi, Utah, we all love. We have a lot of startup companies here, and those companies who really have been going to outside counsel, they can now enjoy the benefits of using AI. And it helps tremendously. One of our clients went from an average turnaround time of a contract, reviewing it took 3 weeks. With the use of our system and our AI, it now takes them 24 hours to get their contracts out. So helps substantially, takes the workload off, and entering the Utah Sandbox allows us to even do more, which helps them free up even more time.
That's excellent. Thank you, Amber. So John, you want to tell us about Estate Guru?
Sure, I'll be brief. So we're a digital estate planning platform. So we're empowered by relationships with our attorneys that span 49 states. And specifically in Utah, we entered the sandbox with an eye for being able to, be a participant and somewhat a voice for access to justice and innovation in a very commoditized and overlooked legal space. Oftentimes you think of estate planning as, I need a will, I need these powers of attorney, I need this healthcare directive, and I'm going to hop on, LegalZoom or a myriad of other document providers that you can Google. And we just said, hey, we actually don't want to cut the attorney out. We don't want to rely on human, a Word document and a browser, right? We believe that competent representation should be scaled across every facet, especially the facet that matters when it pertains to someone's legacy, which is ultimately someone's estate. So we entered the Utah Sandbox. We're a local company as well, but we entered the Sandbox because it helped with our distribution model. Typically, we work with, direct with clients or financial advisors, CPAs and the like. But the way that the American Bar Association rules are structured, they silo participants in the estate planning process. They'll silo a financial advisor to the asset management, but there's that running fear that the unauthorized practice of law is going to creep up and, basically grab them like something out of Tremors. So we decided to enter the Sandbox and grease those distribution wheels, and also be able to help the attorney and our attorneys gain access to a market that they previously didn't have access to. Typically, they work with financial advisors and other referral sources, but using a platform like ours, it expands their scope, their reach, and their marketability, and also gives them better economics for their time, and it gives them the ability to competently represent clients from their practice at a distance through the use of AI. And I may just say that, while we certainly are, using components of AI and branching out to machine learning, it's all software when you think about it. At the end of the day, you break down each algorithm and it practices the way that you want it to, even though it teaches itself sometimes. So, but that's why we came into the Sandbox. So
that's excellent. Thank you. Erin, tell us about Hello Divorce.
Sure. I'm Erin Levine. I'm CEO and founder of Hello Divorce. We have a simple to use platform that makes the divorce process radically transparent and easy to understand. So we provide through our software a clear step-by-step process that focuses everyone on resolution, not litigation. We combine technology with content and scaled services to give people exactly what they need and what they can afford so that they can get divorced. Our goal is to change the divorce law from a necessary evil to a societal good, meaning we want to change the conversation around divorce. We want to reimagine what a successful separation looks like so that people can reorganize their lives in a way that makes the most sense for them and for their families. And we really were attracted to the Sandbox for a variety of reasons. I'm wildly passionate about the work that Utah is doing, because I think what ultimately we will all provide is consumers with exactly what they want: a better path to solving legal issues that capitalizes on the best in our industry, the legal industry, and the best in other industries as well. And that's simply not something that I could do as a law firm, and quite frankly, not do it super well as a non-legal entity either. So I think we'll get more into this, but the biggest reason why I was attracted, well, number one, we were raising money for the first time after being bootstrapped for several years. And it was incredibly important to our investors that A, they didn't have to worry about unauthorized practice of law so much, and B, that they could profit from legal services that we were providing. But most importantly to me and to the integrity of the services and software that we provide to people, was making sure that we had what I call one team, one dream. Right now, the way that we operate in California and in Colorado and soon to be in Texas and New York, and bilingual services in Florida, works well, but doesn't work fabulously well. And the reason is because we have to keep our legal team completely separate from the rest of our company. So imagine not only having to focus a ridiculous amount of my time on finding, let's say, legal loopholes to be able to operate the way that we do, but also to say to the lawyers, hey, you're over here, you're not really part of this team that's growing and scaling and doing amazing things for the legal industry. We just need you when we need you. And I think that that not only affects the morale of lawyers and the legal team, but it affects what types of services and the customer experience that we can provide, and the rest of the team as well. And so we've spent a lot of time figuring out how we can lessen the role of lawyers, when in reality, to serve the entire market, or the majority of the market who actually has contested issues, who has significant legal issues, we need to bring lawyers in. We need to scale them and provide more access to them, which reduces the cost to consumers substantially. We've been able to reduce the average cost of divorce from $15,000 per person to $1,500 on our platform, but also doesn't necessarily reduce the amount of money that lawyers can earn. And so to me, that's just a win-win. I know Utah sees it that way too, but one of the really big reasons why I'm so excited to be here too, and to launch our services through the Sandbox in August.
Aaron, thank you so much. That was terrific. So Daniel, let's hear about Law on Call.
Sure. Our business model is pretty simple. I'm the supervising or managing attorney here. We have a fairly simple business model that focuses on helping people who historically haven't been able to afford legal services. We do that in two ways. Our clients are able to subscribe for a low monthly fee to have access to attorneys between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday. They call us, they ask questions, lawyers answer the phones, including me. No going through the hoops of getting a hold of a lawyer the first time around, no paralegals or legal staff. They get to talk with lawyers. The second prong of our business model is that when those clients need drafting or review of legal documents, they're able to use their online customer client portal to order documents, and we then do the work. Lawyers do the work for them, and we're able to do it quickly, and we charge them an hourly rate that is far less than a traditional law firm charges. Those two things, the ability to talk to a lawyer right away and to have legal work done at a significantly decreased cost, are the ways in which we're helping the Supreme Court of Utah close that access gap. We came here, the parent company, we're wholly owned by non-lawyers. As far as we know, the first in the country to be that way. And so we're able to provide these services at a cheaper rate because we don't have this high overhead as a law firm. Our parent company does our marketing, they do our IT, they pay the rent. These things allow us as lawyers to be lawyers. That's all we do. And it's really cool. It's really fun. It's exciting to be able to help people who haven't been able to get help. Like Dean, those statistics you were talking about at the start, our goal is to make those numbers go down, to help people who need help, can't afford to have it.
That's terrific. Well, Daniel, let's stay with you for a second. And can you talk a little bit about your application to the Sandbox and how that process worked and your interactions with the Innovation Office?
Sure. The application was, it took a little while. There was some back and forth, but it was pretty straightforward. I didn't feel like I had to jump through any hoops because I felt like the Office of Legal Service Innovations was genuinely interested in helping our company help people in Utah. And so the staff at the office was very responsive to our questions. Sometimes we had questions that they didn't know the answers to. They involved the Utah State Bar and other legal services to find answers for us. I felt as though everybody was playing on the same team, trying to further the goal of the Utah Supreme Court. And I love that about it. I became a lawyer to help people, as almost all lawyers do. If I can make a living at it, that's awesome too. But the Supreme Court seems to really want to help people. And the whole application process was with that in mind. I loved it.
And Amber, I saw you nodding during Daniel's. Can you talk a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, it was overall a really easy experience. The application was very straightforward. It took a bit, like Daniel said, to fill out. We had to coordinate with different different business units within our company to make sure that we were answering correctly and we were all on the same page. And the office did a great job of help clarifying questions that we had. Even after we submitted the application, us personally, we had a little bit of confusion as to what type of service we're providing. And so Lucy was great in reaching out and helping us better understand to make sure that we had the right plan going forward and the right service in place. So it was a good experience.
So I was thinking as I listened to Daniel and Amber, John, about your experience, because you have clients outside of the Sandbox and you have clients inside the Sandbox. Can you tell us a little bit about the difference between serving clients outside and serving clients inside, and and I guess one other thing is I'd like you to tie that to the application process and just help us think about, is it been what you imagined when you applied to get into the Sandbox?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I think we had similar motivations to Daniel, and wanting to work with the Supreme Court. And I think anybody that does interact with the Supreme Court should want to act with the Supreme Court. But yeah, we have clients in 49 states. The technology that we've developed, it works differently in Utah to a degree based on, us having approval in the Sandbox than it does outside. Which is a huge net benefit for us. We're able to adopt our model to, massive, I wouldn't say massive, but, much easier distribution. Our partners can, work with us. I think, we work with institutions now, and we work with financial institutions nationwide with financial advisory firms, RIAs, accounting firms, et cetera. But in Utah, the delivery model is different. And the model for incentivizing is different. When I think of access to justice, we think of it in two ways: reach and resource. So reach is, how far, you can essentially, go to get whatever you need. So resource is the other, right? Saying, hey, what can I grab with my reach? So reach is, who do I know? Resource is, what does they know, right? So in the legal profession, we categorize that as typically intellectual capital. It's the strategy of implementing documents, and it's also the language put into documents that codify, legal service in many cases. And there are other types, but in the estate planning world, that's generally how it works. And so our goal was to, take our ability to provide reach to our clients and to our partners, including our distribution partners, the financial advisor, the accountant, the institution, and also provide our clients with resource, the intellectual capital of several attorneys adapted to our technology that can be applied to any client. So whether you're in Escalante, Utah, and you have, an estate problem with your ranch land, you want to draw on, the best attorney that can solve that for you, whether they're in Salt Lake or Provo or somewhere else. You may not have the local, attorney who knows, how to deal with mineral rights under your land, but we have that expertise and we can put that on our platform. And not only is that accessible and reachable, but the resource is almost unparalleled for clients like that. So in the application, tying that to the application process, it wasn't easy for us. Like, straightforward doesn't mean easy, simple. It forced us to rethink. I don't know how many times I went back and forth with John Lund and Lucy Rica. I was like, hey, I have to change this and adapt this. And you kind of get scrubbed clean in places, you didn't know you had. You're like, wait, did we do this wrong from the beginning? We've been selling in, California and Texas, Florida, Vermont, and then making us think about adapting our technology to Utah has had an even larger net benefit, because as access to justice perforates other state lines, it gives us a competitive advantage, right, to know how to adapt our model.
Requirements in the sandbox, so you're reporting back on your experiences. How's that gone?
Very smoothly. We work with the sandbox. It's the one call, candidly, it's the one call that no one on our team can move around. If we have a large client that calls us and says, hey, we need our software fixed, or we've got a bug problem, or we need X functionality coded in 2 weeks, the one call that we can't move is the call that we schedule with our regulator. So we essentially, hey, we don't move these calls, and we essentially play ball the way that they want us to play ball. I think one of the cooler things about the team at the Utah Sandbox is how open to innovation they are. So when I've worked with, John Lund, Lucy Rica, James Tufel, it's been, very different from when we used to talk to attorneys and they thought our model was, incredibly difficult. But these three particularly have a mind for innovation. They ask us, hey, how can the audit be done smoother from a technology implementation perspective? And that's a conversation with my CTO and James. And it's been really cool to go back and forth and be helpful in that way, and also to be helped in that way. So
that's awesome. So one member of our audience wants to know the name of your company, John. So I'm going to let you tell him.
Yeah, Estate Guru. Yeah, I mean, from a branding perspective, it's fine. It'll do for now. But yeah, we love it.
Estate Guru.
Yeah.
So Aaron, I'd be interested also in hearing about the application process, but I remember your presentation because I was still involved when you presented to the task force, and you did a great presentation, and wondered if you had any advice for people who might be thinking about entering the sandbox. I suspect we have some potential service providers on this session, and wondered if you had any thoughts about that.
Well, let's see. I could be wrong, but I don't think presenting is a requirement now. No, it's not a requirement. Although it was really great to do, and I really enjoyed getting the chance to do it.
Days, we were trying to get a feel for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot has even changed for Hello Divorce since then, and that's what I'm hearing from Jonathan too. Is like things are constantly changing and evolving. But I think like in terms of the application process, I am a lawyer. I've practiced law for 16 years. Until very recently, I was still trying cases and giving legal advice. And so I overthink everything. I'm also the daughter of an insurance defense lawyer. So I really overthink everything. And it took me a long time to get my application in. And I oftentimes had our partners, A to J Tech, asking me, what's the status? What's the status? And but when it came down to it, and like I sat down and thought through it, and really started to fill it out, it wasn't very challenging at all. And with James and the audit, like it's very clear to me that Utah wants good information and that they want to protect consumers. But he was also very concerned about the quote unquote burden that he was putting on me to have to get this information, right? Because I think, I could be wrong, but I think that Utah wants to encourage lawyers to help solve the access to justice crisis, right? Not just bring in big companies. And so they want to make sure that we can do it. And it was funny because I was thinking the whole time, I can't wait to provide this information. Like we've had this information, we've seen how it's worked in other states without getting an opportunity to do a model that this is this holistic and this, it's like centric to the client experience. So we are really looking forward to being able to provide it in a way that hopefully continues to build on this innovation.
Yeah, well, let me stay with you for a second, Erin, and I was intrigued about your story about your funders and sort of thinking about funding. So again, we may have people who are thinking about this and would need to raise some money. Can you tell us about a little bit more about your conversations with potential investors and how the sandbox may have affected the way they saw the investment and sort of give us some insights on the funding process?
Sure. I can't speak very specifically because of SEC rules and we're still about to close, so we're not quite there yet, but I'm hopeful that I'll have a big announcement in July and that I'll be able to help a lot of people on this call as they go through the fundraising experience. Because what I can tell you happened in most scenarios is that I would share my idea and investors would get really excited, and then their lawyers would get involved in due diligence and they'd realize, oh crap, like there are so many regulations here and we've seen this go wrong so many times, and there was a really big, level of fear. Also, like we've been practicing the same way for, hundreds of years, and we have either like the total DIY or the, 100% represented. Sometimes we throw in mediation and, limited scope services, but there really hasn't been a consumer-centered, holistic way to deliver legal services until now. And so, it's hard to get investors to wrap their heads around that. By the same token, law and maybe construction are like two of the last big industries to truly be disrupted. And venture capitalists and investors, especially ones with an aggressive appetite for risk, are super excited about getting involved. So I think it really matters who you approach, who you're connected to, really understanding their thesis and what it is and who it is that they invest in, and seeing, number one, might they be a good fit for you? But number two, what can they help to provide us? Because especially as lawyers, like we don't have all the skills. We might need help with content or branding or connections to other investors or to employment benefits and HR, or there's just, such a gamut of skills that we know we don't know and we need help with. So looking at investors who can really help with that and offer some serious guidance is a great place to start.
That's excellent. Thank you. That was really, really helpful, even given the constraints. Thank you. So Daniel, I thought you might have something to say on this topic too. You said that the owners of Law on Call are all non-lawyers, and I'd be curious to know about sort of how they view this business and any insights you might have.
Sure. Law on Call is owned by a company called Northwest Registered Agents that provides professional registered agent services to small and mid-sized, and even some large-sized businesses all across the country. That company's been unable to provide any legal advice because of the constraints in the practice of law. So it started a law firm in Utah under the Sandbox. The company Northwest Registered Agent hasn't had to seek outside funding. It is the funder. They they provide the funding for our law firm. And the goal, of course, is to make a ton of money. But in order to do that, we have to reach a lot of people. And so all of their emphasis is not on making money right now. It's on providing a service that's beneficial to a lot of people. And when the people get the services they want, the money will come in. So there really isn't a concern about funding at all, just because Our Owners is a well-established company.
Yeah.
Already.
It's sort of law adjacent, so they were able to see that opportunity in a way that I would think would be really hospitable to what they're already doing.
Exactly.
Amber, any thoughts on this? Investors, I mean, LawGeex, obviously, it's a sort of different project than Hello Divorce or Law and Call, but how about, sort of the non-lawyers interfacing with this sort of business?
Yeah, so our funding comes from venture capitalist firms that specialize in high tech. So, we during the pandemic, when a lot of people were losing funding, we got a significant source of funding. So we've been doing very well on that front. They're kind of hands off. There's not a lot of interaction on the day-to-day operations with the venture capitalists. And then, unlike Daniel, our CEO is an attorney. So one of the co-founders is, the other co-founder is the geek in LawGeex out of Israel, and he is the more of the tech guru person. So yeah, that's how we're funded.
And John, you want to say anything about Estate Guru in this vein?
We're bootstrapped. We've been bootstrapped. We went on a string of acquisitions last year and acquired 5 companies. There's a strong appetite. You get solid looks, but yeah, we haven't. When we have no future intention of raising capital, given our profile. So
yeah, okay. So I'm going to ask one more question to the panelists, and then we'll take questions from the participants in the call. So the audience, if you will, and we'll. But let's think some big picture thoughts here, and I'm happy to let any of you jump in, but I'm pretty good at calling on people if you don't. But I'm curious about how you see the future of the legal services industry under this new regulatory landscape. So how is this, you are sort of the pioneers in this Utah Sandbox. So, but project us down the road a little bit. How do you see, how do you see this thing playing out? And do you think it will dramatically affect your own business, or do you see yourself sort of doing what you propose to do into the indefinite future? Daniel's eager to talk about this. Yeah.
I love looking into the future of this. I think that Utah is leading the way in something that's going to be incredible in this country. The innovation and the opportunity to change the legal landscape in some ways that will work, in some ways that may not work as well, is something so incredible for us that are participating in the sandbox now and those who will in the future. All the other states are looking at us. They're looking at us and they're looking at Arizona. And if we succeed, we're going to help a lot of people who haven't been able to get help. If we fail, we sure tried hard, and that's great. I see it working, though. I think that people are going to benefit. The country is going to open up. We're going to become able to provide legal services to so many people who haven't had them. That's my goal. I'm sure it's the goal of everyone on the panel. It's the goal of everybody who's joined the sandbox here and is working on alternative business structures in Arizona. And it should be the goal of everybody, lawyers and non-lawyers. We should help people, and I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be great.
Excellent. Erin, I saw you nodding. Do you want to add anything to that?
I agree wholeheartedly. I think that we've let the legal industry define what it means to win or what it means to have a good or best option. And we've also let lawyers control how we resolve big business to consumer issues, right? Like landlord tenant, bankruptcy, divorce, and other family law issues. And the problem with that is that we can't look at law in a vacuum, and we can't assume that everybody can afford a lawyer. And so getting to step back and now look at how we can help people resolve big issues holistically, what they actually need beyond the law to get through a major life transition is incredibly exciting, usually a lot more affordable, and gets to the heart of the problem. So I just I can't imagine a future where we don't continue to push hard against a lawyer-centric model. I imagine a future where we spend a lot more time educating people on when and if they need a lawyer, and how they might need a lawyer, and how they can incorporate that lawyer into whatever legal crisis or issue that they are moving through in the moment. The bottom line is that lawyers are very important, but they are oftentimes not the best people or best resource to resolve the vast majority of the stuff that people are going through when they face the legal system.
Excellent. So Amber and John, we're going to get your big vision thoughts in a bit, but we have a lot of questions in the chat, and Lucy's been moderating that. So Lucy, do you want to throw out a question?
Sure. I'm going to, April popped one in first, and it's actually one that I can answer, so maybe I'll just grab it. So the question is, have there been efforts to evaluate or research the effectiveness and to assess unintended consequences of these innovations? And the answer is, the Office of Legal Services Innovation itself is a very narrowly focused regulator focusing on potential harms from these. So all the data that these guys have to report is focused on evaluating harm, consumer harm, so that a consumer gets a bad legal outcome, a consumer pays for something they didn't need, or consumer fails to exercise a right because of bad advice. That's what we're looking at. But we have a team of researchers, some of whom are attending right now, who are assessing all other different types of aspects of these innovations, including benefits and potential unintended consequences. So we have these external research teams that are taking on that focus. But we, as the regulator, wanted to keep our mission very, very, very narrow on consumer harm. So the next question is from Zach DiBiola, who is the director of the Unlocking Legal Regulation Project at ILES. And the question is, what message do you have for states deciding whether or not to follow the Utah model of regulatory innovation, which is one model. Arizona's model, which is an ABS, non-lawyer ownership focused reform, more in line with the UK, is a different model. So it's really sort of open right now in the United States. We are taking one path, but others may take others. So I'd be curious.
Yeah, anybody from the panel want to sort of weigh in on this? So do we have advice for other states? I'm going to guess Daniel's going to say, yes, do it. John, you want to say something?
I think that's a great question. I don't know how many, people are on this, call to be able to speak to those in the positions to create that. But my point of advice would be collaborate. I think, this kind of ties into my big vision of how I would see the legal tech industry or lawyer services industry going anyways, which I won't get into right now, but is collaborate. I think there are ways to speak with those who have done it before, both in Utah Sandbox, the Arizona Sandbox, and to speak with the entrepreneurs, to speak with those individuals that are involved, and find ways that that work before you implement. I think curiosity, and this should be plain, right? Curiosity is kind of the mother of discovery. So be curious about it, talk to the individuals and to the teams that are involved in it. I think that's the best thing that other states could do, is say, hey, we may not open this right now, but let's begin the discussions and let's have them with an eye for curiosity, and then see the points in which this could serve, not only our constituents, but, serve the greater, moral side to the argument of providing legal services. So that would be my piece of advice. It's not a, open the floodgates. That's never, I mean, the first man through the door always gets shot, right? So at the end of the day, you want to be the guy that's talking and learning about what's behind the door. So create those conversations and discussions.
Yeah, great advice. Amber, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think other states should follow Utah. I think it's a good, I'm different than the other panelists because while they're focused on the individual, we're focused on the not corporation, but the business side of things. And I think that the legal field has been behind in AI compared to other fields, and they're less likely to try it. We're lawyers, we're creature of habit. So I think by jumping into this and really exploring options, they can really unlock the bottlenecks that they're creating for themselves in their own law firms and corporations. And having something in their state like Utah, the Utah Sandbox, I think can really help them come into the AI field, the AI world, and help them better embrace it and move forward with it.
This is terrific. So the next question is from Anna Carpenter, a colleague at the University of Utah who's been working on some of the empirics around this. And a question I'm really curious about too. Curious about your experience with data collection and the requirements under the sandbox for reporting back. We heard a little bit from John about that already. And Daniel, I don't know if you could share because you're already in the sandbox, and I think Amber and Aaron are just about getting clients there. I'd be curious how you're sort of viewing the data collection process.
I'll call it a necessary pain in the backside.
Okay.
It's there's a lot of information that the Supreme Court and the office want from us. I understand why they want every piece of it, and I'm happy to provide every piece, but it's a little bit different than a traditional model at a law firm where we keep our own records and we don't track the same things. I spent 14 years at a private firm and I tracked very little of what I track now. So it's been quite a shift in the way I practice law. But there's been a lot of shifts in the way I practice law while in the sandbox. And this is one of the collection of data is the most important, because the only way that the Supreme Court of Utah and any other state who's looking at us can judge whether we succeed or we fail is through the data that we collect.
Excellent. Anybody else want to weigh in on that? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I think it will differ from business model to business model. For Daniel, I could, and for Amber and for Aaron, it will be different. We're at this point, we're pretty tech enabled at Estate Guru, so the data collection process was simple enough because we silo our data into data lakes, and we can draw and simply categorize and then produce an output almost at the push of a button, right, or a query, and run that repeatedly. So we don't see it as too onerous. That wasn't our initial impression before we really knew what the sandbox was asking for. But I think overall, very positive. This data collection, a positive experience. Can anyone say it's positive? That's, probably not, but simple enough. And I would just like to add that if the cost to being an innovator and to enter a new market is simply the cost of compliance, that's the lowest cost you're going to find to enter a market anywhere.
Yeah.
So it makes it super easy, and that should incent other people to, look at the barrier of data reporting as minimal and minuscule.
Yeah. So this, thank you for that. Super. This next question is really one I was thinking to call on you, Lucy, but I kept thinking another good person to answer this would be John London. He just turned on his video, so I don't know, John, if I can ask you as a member of the audience here, but the question is from Sarah. And how does your business navigate pushback from attorneys who are more set in the traditional practice of law and view companies like yours with resistance? So I'd be interested in hearing to the panelists, but Lucy, you may have a little bit more of a 30,000-foot view on this. And I know John would have some thoughts on this. Lucy, you want to start us off?
I actually am somewhat protected by John, but
So get John Lund to help you. Yeah.
yeah, but I'm actually really curious because I know, I mean, we've been sort of pushing the reg reform stuff and obviously building the model for the regulator and whatnot, but I'm really curious to hear from the participants themselves, from our panelists, because, as the actual providers of services, I'd be really curious to hear what the feedback that they're getting.
Somebody want to talk about the Amber, go ahead. Yeah.
So I'll take this one. So being a AI tech company for other companies, we're interacting with the legal department of companies day in and day out. So that's what we do. And they really are interested in this. Their whole reason they come to us is because they have outrageous volumes. They need to get stuff off their plate so they can work on more strategic items. And the thought that they'll now be able to have us do even more and actually practice law, if you will, instead of just running it through their playbooks and stuff. They're really excited about it. And, we've got a lot of buzz and a lot of interest in it. So they're embracing it.
Yeah, Erin.
I can speak to this. And I see that Jeff Kelly and Jeff Ward are on this call, and they can probably remember when I told them a few years ago that my goal was really to not only bring more access to justice to consumers who can't afford lawyers or don't want to spend on lawyers, but also to prove to the legal profession that there are other ways to practice that are more sustainable, that involve work-life balance, that take a lot of the administrative stuff off of your shoulders so that you can do what you do best. And the good news is that that's exactly what we've done for lawyers that work for us in the states that we're in, and that they are earning as much or more as they were earning before, and they're setting their hours, and they are have automated, or through us have now automated everything that possibly can be automated so that they can focus on the law. The bad news is that way too much of my time is spent trying to get people to work with us to begin with, to trust that they're going to get enough volume, that the hourly rate that we are going to pay is maybe less than what they can collect directly from the consumer, but will actually make more financial sense to them, that they are complying with like legal regulations, that, I mean, all of the different concerns that go into it. And I don't have a lot of patience for that. It gets me really frustrated. And so I really need to like turn my focus back to lobbying the profession and encouraging more people to join our team. But one thing that I can say to any prospective lawyer that you may not know out there who might want to work with Hello Divorce is that any one of the other lawyers that currently work for us would be happy to connect with you and tell them about their experience, because I think they really are enjoying it. And it's a really fun way to practice when you can provide and give the advice that you need to provide, but then hands off, allow the rest of the team to come in and finish it off.
Excellent. I see the time ticking away here, and we'll probably have time for one more question. So let me ask this one, sort of a forward-looking, big picture question. But this is from Howard. What's the next big hurdle for moving forward toward providing greater access to justice, greater legal access? What are the markers of success for these programs? How will we know when we're accomplishing something? So John and Amber, I didn't give you a chance on the big vision picture, so maybe start with you two, and then Daniel and Erin, if you want to weigh in after that. John, you want to start us?
Yeah, great question. I love, everyone here loves thinking big picture, but the next big hurdle, I believe, is actually, separate from regulatory adoption of sandboxes. So moving away from states adopting a regulatory sandbox, I think it's actually consumer trust. So when you sit down with a lawyer, you have the unique experience that is based on, human behavior. One, you're able to see that individual. Two, you're able to identify, and establish patterns of trust or distrust, right? The way they talk, their pedigree, what types of cases they've worked on that are similar to yours. Do you like this individual or not? And then third, you're able to hold someone that is visible and in front of you accountable for the result. And that's, like you see in most other industries, those three things are typically a barrier to scale. Even in another industry, from Uber to Airbnb to others, you look at those as you have to establish those things in order to achieve scale. And I think the Utah Sandbox is really based on achieving scale, because scale is reach and reach is access to justice. So that's one of the goals, right? And so I think consumer trust in the process, and unlike Uber and unlike Airbnb, a legal result can't be measured until years down the road, oftentimes, right? Was that the right decision? Was that the best advice? And in an advisory world, you don't want to throw out what you call like the bastion of the intellectual capital driving the advice. It would be foolhardy to throw out the lawyer, in my opinion. It would be foolhardy to throw out the financial advisor. It'd be foolhardy to throw out your accountant. I mean, you kind of get what you pay for in all three of those categories, right? That's historically proven true, both in a market setting and, with all the individuals that we know and work with. So you want to be able to enhance that advice, and you want to be able to streamline that, make it easier, make it, replicable and repeatable, which are two separate things. But I would say consumer trust is the next barrier. Can I trust what this is going to do for me? And years down the road, will I look back and say, wow, was that the right thing to do, is trust this machine or this bot or this automated process with an attorney review happening when I'm not in the room or when I'm sleeping, right? So, and second, sorry, that was a really long-winded response. I'll try and be short, but the markers of success for these programs is adjudication, right, of the result. On the legal side, is it, approval in the courts? Is it upheld by courts? Take estate planning, for example. You really don't know it works until you die, and your beneficiaries will tell you on the other side when they get there if they got their stuff out of probate, right? Or if wealth was able to be passed on in the way that was, best for your circumstances, or if, your mom had a significant health challenge and your healthcare power of attorney held up when it was, thrown up against, the court. So adjudication is one, but the marker of consumer success, separate from scale, achieving widespread trust and adoption, would certainly be, and this is going to be kind of corny, but the marker for success is client satisfaction. So you're going to go and take, whether you want to use a net promoter score or you want to use the traditional measurements of client satisfaction, are you able to be recommended to the next person? And does that person who's recommending you actually have a good result to rely upon, and not just a financial incentive like a discount code or a XYZ to pass you on, right? And there's a danger that lies in creating scale through hybrid measures or other measures through discounts, etc. You really want to find people that recommend you for you, kind of the same way that works with everything else in life. You want people that like you for you, right?
Awesome.
So
thank you.
Those are my things.
That's terrific. Amber, how about a last word, and then we'll turn it back to Lucy.
So I'll just be real quick. I see three major hurdles in our industry, my industry. The first one is multi-jurisdictional issues until the rest of the United States gets on board, the same as Utah, and leading that innovation and access to justice. We're still going to have to do a little tap dancing around the multi-jurisdictional issues. Second one is we get a lot of attorneys afraid that this is going to replace them, and especially corporate counsel. Are you going to need me now that AI is going to do it? Yes, the question, or the answer to that question is yes. AI will not, in our lifetimes, I don't think, replace the actual human being. It will always need a human being's touch in it. Some of the lesser complex issues might be able to be fully automated, but the contracts are vast, they're complex, the issues that arise are always different, so AI will never be able to think like that, I think, in our lifetime. And the third hurdle is having others enter the markets as competitors that may not have the sophistication that someone like LawGeex has, which could create a black mark on using AI to provide legal services and contract markup. Unfortunately, people when they get burned, they don't want to put their hand in that fire again. So those are the three biggest hurdles. But I think if we can show that using this program, that it can be successful, we can help alleviate your volumes and your workload. You're not going to lose your job over it, but you are going to have a much happier work-life balance because you're not going to be working 24/7 doing contracts. I think that's going to be the marker for success, and that's what's going to get the buy-in from everyone else.
I just want to say thank you to all of our panelists. That has been really an hour well spent for me. I have learned a lot, and I'm grateful for your time. Lucy, thank you for organizing, and I'm going to turn it back to you for some concluding remarks.
Sure, and thank you, Gordon. Lots of thank yous all around. What a great panel. Appreciate all of you, not only for doing this particular task, which I assigned you, but for jumping into the sandbox at all. And thanks to everybody who attended. This has been great. As I said, it will be posted on our website. Feel free to share and tweet and whatnot. I posted the website in the chat, but it's utahinnovation.office.org. And there you can find all sorts of information about what we're doing and what each of these folks is doing. And yeah, feel free to follow up with me if anybody has questions, and we appreciate everyone's participation. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.